And are you really planning to go there? Gregory asked skeptically. What's the problem? He wasn't a stranger to me, and I want to say goodbye, Lily snapped. Her husband replied mock thoughtfully. Let's think about that. This not a stranger left you alone with a child and for about 7 years didn't make any appearance in your life. You know that's completely not true, she protested. That was indeed a very crude generalization. She had spent some time with Archie, but their personalities didn't match, and they decided it was better to part ways. It was a mutual decision. Only after that did Lily find out she was pregnant. But, deciding not to complicate matters, she left things as they were and didn't inform him about her condition. Well, go ahead, defend him now, Gregory said mockingly. What are you talking about? Lily blushed. Are you jealous of a man I, as you rightly noted, haven't seen for 7 years, and who, on top of that, is dead? Jealous, really? Ha, you made that up. I just don't understand. Why do you need to go to his funeral? Lily sighed heavily. This conversation was clearly going in circles. How could she explain to her husband why she was going if he couldn't understand? She had said she wanted to say goodbye. What more could she say? She hadn't even canceled any of their shared plans or done anything like that for it. Yet Gregory was still displeased. Though, come to think of it, when was he ever satisfied? From the very start of their marriage, everything had gone completely wrong. At the time, she had just gone through a difficult breakup, though she could hardly admit to herself how serious it was. On top of that, Lily had just discovered she was pregnant. Gregory had appeared completely unexpectedly and had courted her beautifully. He said he loved her almost at first sight, that it didn't matter to him that she was pregnant by another man, and claimed he was ready to accept the child and raise him as his own. In short, he said a lot. In practice, it turned out completely differently. She married him not out of great love, of course, but rather out of despair and horror at the thought of raising herself and her son alone. Gregory had not instantly fallen in love with the newborn. He probably couldn't accept that he wasn't the father. Although his love for her could have saved the situation if it had truly existed. However, Lily soon realized that there were no lofty feelings in their family at all. Gregory needed a wife because his status demanded it. He had built a solid career and now needed a presentable life partner. And, of course, a woman with a child, who was in a difficult situation, fit that role perfectly. By marrying her, Gregory appeared to the outside world as a noble hero, and, moreover, could demand a lot from her, reproaching her for the child's parentage and the fact that he supported both of them. Well, if you don't understand, Lily snorted, I don't know how else to explain. Just try to accept that I need to be there. She needs to be there. Gregory grumbled. Fine, go. Just come back quickly, please. I'm not planning to sit here too long with this. His name is Bernard, Lily corrected her husband almost angrily. And please, stop speaking about my son as if he's an inanimate object. And you, please, Gregory mimicked, stop talking about this boy as if he were my son. Continuing this argument was pretty pointless. It was good that her husband had even agreed to look after Bernard. She really didn't want to drag the little boy to a funeral, especially considering that he looked exactly like his father. Someone would surely notice the striking resemblance at such a sad event. There was no need to traumatize the child. Within half an hour, Lily was at the church. Seeing the lifeless body of her former lover was far harder than she had imagined. She barely forced herself to approach the coffin and lay a modest bouquet of daisies on it. He had loved these flowers. Lily somehow endured the church service. She barely noticed what was happening, immersed in her gloomy thoughts. She imagined completely unrealistic scenes of how happily they could have lived together with Archie, raising their son, just loving each other. Of course, this had always seemed somewhat unrealistic, and now it was completely impossible. And that was what hurt the most. The only thing that could comfort her was the firm certainty that she would leave this event and return to her harsh reality. All these ghosts of what could have been would finally leave her in peace. Forever. After the service, she planned to quietly slip away from the crowd and leave carefully without drawing attention to herself. She didn't want to stay for the wake. It would have been too painful and overall rather pointless. She had already received from this funeral everything she had come for. "Lily, where are you going?" asked an elderly woman. "It's not over yet. You absolutely have to come to the wake." Lily stared at the protruding, somewhat unhealthy face and froze. She had seen this woman in person only once or twice, and even then briefly, and knew her only from photographs and Archie's stories. This was his mother, who now looked far worse than before, which, however, was hardly surprising. But overall, Rachel was still recognizable. Lily hesitated. She absolutely did not want to stay, but she couldn't refuse the mother who had just buried her only son. Finally, with a heavy sigh, she made up her mind and, along with everyone else, moved to the restaurant. At times, it seemed to her that the would-be mother-in-law was watching carefully to make sure she didn't slip away. Everything went exactly as Lily had imagined. Guests ate, drank, and shared fond memories of the deceased. Sometimes they cried, sometimes they almost smiled while recounting something interesting. She had to speak as well, saying a few warm words, how wonderful Archie had been, a reliable friend, and other similar things. "Friends," Rachel took the floor once again, "I am very grateful to each of you for coming to say goodbye and for all the kind words you shared about my son. After all, simply for being there with him during his life. And I must inform you, although illness took Archie from us at a very young age and quite unexpectedly, he did manage to leave a will. So I will ask the notary to read its contents." Lily slowly and discreetly began to rise from the table. Now she really had no reason to be there. She did not want to watch how the modest inheritance of the deceased would be divided. However, Rachel noticed another attempt to flee and with a look signaled to the would-be daughter-in-law that it would be better for her to stay. Lily obediently sat back down, though all of this was beginning to irritate her considerably. She didn't pay attention to the notary, who droned on listing, in a monotonous voice, who was entitled to what. There were heirs to a stamp collection, and there was a library in general. Everything was boring and calm. The deceased didn't have any property worth fighting over. "Lily Cooper," the notary suddenly announced. "Lily Cooper inherits a house in the village under one condition," he clarified. "Me?" the woman exclaimed in surprise. Yes, the notary confirmed politely. "Well, of course, if you are indeed Lily Cooper." "No, this must be a mistake," she protested. "What house? We haven't seen each other for 7 years, not to mention having any contact." "Well, that's the deceased's will." "It's not my business," the notary shrugged. "I'm only here to read the will and make sure it's carried out." "So, you are entitled to a house in the village. Did you say there's a condition?" Lily asked, slightly calmer. Yes, there is. It says here, to inherit, one must live in this house for 1 month with their son. After that, the house will be entirely at your disposal." "Oh, come on. Nothing better to do," Lily snorted. "I don't need this house." "You shouldn't refuse right away," the mother-in-law remarked almost sadly. "At least take a look at it. Maybe you'll like it?" "Fine," Lily replied tersely. "I'll think about it." After that, she was finally allowed to leave. Returning from the funeral, Lily found her husband in an even worse mood than when she had left. She tried to find out the reason, but he stubbornly refused to explain, muttering only that everything was fine and that she was imagining things. Meanwhile, he grew gloomier by the minute. "What's the matter?" So upset that I actually went? She finally asked. Oh, like I'd get upset over such nonsense, Gregory snorted. Lily thought her husband might laugh at that moment. You think too highly of yourself if you really believe this could ruin my mood. Then what's the reason? Lily pressed. Please, tell me. Maybe I can help? Help? This time Gregory laughed, but not cheerfully. Yes, maybe you could help. Go to the store and bring me a rope. We seem to have soap, but check. If not, we'll grab some. Tell me properly what happened. Lily got angry. I just came back from a funeral, so your jokes are completely inappropriate. Why are you so persistent, huh? Gregory looked at her angrily. Fine, listen, since you insist. I was handling a very big deal at work. I developed it myself and took full personal responsibility for executing it. And just now, it turned out it fell through. What promised huge profits now threatens losses. Well, can you help? Yes, that's sad, Lily agreed. And will this affect your career? It seems to me this is your first real failure. The management should understand that, overall, you've brought far more benefit than harm. You don't understand anything. Just as I thought. Her husband exploded. This won't just affect my career, consider it buried already. I repeat, this deal was my own initiative, but all expenses came from the company's budget. And now, with everything falling apart, I'm not just being kicked out. I have to somehow make up for this budget hole. Wow, and how much are we talking about? Lily asked cautiously. Gregory gave her a contemptuous look but finally stated the figure. Lily gasped. It was really impressive. Probably even in a whole year at her pet shop, she wouldn't have earned that much. And there was still the matter of living expenses, supporting her son, and now an unemployed husband, at least until he found another job. The situation looked hopeless. For a few seconds, Lily froze, but then a saving thought occurred to her. She had found a way to fix things. Yes, to lift this unbearable burden off her husband's shoulders so he could move forward freely. You know, if this debt can wait a month, I might be able to help you. And how exactly would you do that? Rob a bank or something? Why a bank? Lily smiled slyly. You didn't want me to go to that funeral, but it turns out I had to go. Well, explain what happened there. Gregory asked, desperation in his voice. How can the funeral of your ex save me? Like this. It turns out Archie didn't forget me and left me a house in the village. But with the condition that my son and I live there for a month. After that, the house can be sold. For a moment, Gregory blinked in bewilderment, as if he didn't fully grasp what she meant. It wasn't surprising, it took time to process such news. He had thought all was lost, and here was an unusual path to salvation. Wow, he finally breathed out. His expression brightened, a smile playing on his lips. He finally understood what she meant. And apparently, he wasn't bothered at all that the money source would be Lily's detested ex. All right, then, let's get moving, he said feverishly. Go to that house. The sooner we start, the sooner we finish. Lily felt her husband was already ready to grab a suitcase and start throwing everything into it himself. She could only hope that his reaction was solely about the debt and not because he was glad to send his wife and child out the door, even if just for a limited time. Wait, it's not that simple. We need to contact the notary, get leave from work. You didn't agree right away? Gregory's eyes widened in surprise. Well, I had to think, Lily muttered. I wasn't even sure I wanted this house. Wow, you really are something, her husband exclaimed in disbelief. Don't want it. Then we could have just sold it. Money isn't ever bad. All right, go sort out this inheritance. Luckily, there's time. The only thing that made her happy was that it was summer. That meant she didn't have to ask her son to skip school. And in general, she didn't want to pull him out of his learning environment. In the fall, he was supposed to start first grade. And as everyone knows, if you miss some small detail at the very beginning, the whole education can fail. Getting leave from work for a whole month, however, turned out to be no easy task. Despite having accumulated a large number of vacation days over the years, this actually worked against her. The management was used to Lily always sacrificing her time off, and now she suddenly wanted to take leave. A whole month? The manager exclaimed, flinging her hands up. And who will clean the cages? Feed the animals? Did you even think about that? Well, that's not my responsibility. In theory, everyone takes turns, Lily said cautiously. You know perfectly well that in practice that doesn't happen. Tanya is afraid of the parrots. Austin is allergic to hamsters. The manager shook her head. I think Austin's allergic to work in general, Lily smirked. Mashinka, darling, please understand me. I really need this month. It's a matter of life and death. Oh, what can we do with you? The manager sighed. We'll try to manage somehow. But still try to be quick about it. And what else could Lily do? She could only shrug. She didn't want to explain the whole situation. The will's conditions were too strange and implausible. She had to cite vague family circumstances. Finally, having taken care of her affairs, Lily set off for the village with her son. She couldn't even imagine what awaited her there and had already been worried in advance that things might not be easy. But, in principle, she had already agreed to this adventure. Besides, she needed to help her husband. Upon arriving at the given address, Lily looked around. At first glance, everything seemed better than she had anticipated. The plot of land wasn't completely neglected, and the house, although in need of some cosmetic repairs, appeared solid and sturdy. More precisely, there were actually 2 houses on the plot, plus a summer kitchen. All of them were roughly equally worn. On one hand, this was encouraging. They could probably sell everything for even more than she had hoped. But on the other hand, Lily already imagined how much work lay ahead. Are we going to live here? Asked Bernard, holding her hand tightly. Yes, darling, his mother replied gently. But only for a short time, just a month. You won't even notice when it's over. Then we'll go back home. That's a pity, her son said unexpectedly. There are 2 whole houses here, and at home we only have rooms. Maybe we could just stay here, and Dad could come to us? Oh, it would be inconvenient for Dad to get to work from here, sighed Lily. And honestly, it would be for me too. Well, let's not rush to conclusions. Maybe no one will even like it here. No, we'll like it, the child said stubbornly, in a childlike manner. Lily didn't know where to start. Unlocking one of the houses, the smaller one, she went inside and was horrified. Inside was complete chaos, dust, dirt, cobwebs in the corners. Everything needed a thorough cleaning. And, perhaps, that was the first thing that needed to be done. Otherwise, she and Bernard risked simply suffocating. Here the first problem appeared. As it turned out, the house had no running water. Neither of the houses did. But there was a bucket, a telling reminder of how water had been drawn in the past. They had to go to the river several times. Without this, it was impossible to clean or prepare any food. Finally, after overcoming the first difficulties and tidying up at least the first floor, Lily started cooking. Of course, even here problems arose. There was no familiar gas stove in the house, so she had to adapt to an old electric one. Nevertheless, she managed to cook a pot of soup that, at first glance, looked quite decent. Lily called her son to lunch, but for some reason, he didn't respond. Worried, she went into the house. He wasn't there, and before panicking, she decided to check the yard. First, she went to the second, larger house, which she had only glanced at before, and saw a scene that was both touching and horrifying. The horror lay in the fact that the large house was, of course, in no better condition than the smaller one. But Bernard was completely unfazed. He was calmly sitting on the dusty floor, engrossed in playing with some figurines. Upon closer inspection, Lily realized they were wooden toys. There were cars and some animals. And, in fact, there was just about everything. All of it was movable, vehicles could roll, lions and dogs moved their paws and opened their mouths. But most surprisingly, everything looked entirely handcrafted. It was frightening to imagine how much this beauty could be worth if a good marketer were to sell it. Bernard, of course, wasn't thinking about any of that. He had simply discovered a stash of these fascinating items and had forgotten the rest of the world. He was so absorbed that he didn't even hear his mother calling him for lunch. And now, when she was standing nearby, the boy pointed to the figurines with excitement. "Mom, look at this." "Yes, it's interesting, of course," Lily said with a relieved smile. "But first, we should wipe the dust off them. And not just them. Besides, we haven't eaten anything since morning. Let's have lunch, and then you can continue your explorations." "Okay," her son replied without much enthusiasm. With visible regret, he cast a farewell glance at his treasures and followed Lily to the dining table. There, they were met with another shocking discovery. Right in the summer kitchen, where Lily decided to have lunch, sat Rachel. "Oh, how wonderful that you finally decided to come!" exclaimed the guest. Lily was so stunned by this surprise that she didn't even know how to respond. Meanwhile, her would-be mother-in-law was scrutinizing Bernard far too closely. This was somewhat unsettling, but things got even worse when Rachel thoughtfully remarked, "And your son, he's the spitting image of Archie." Lily knew this herself, but she absolutely did not want to traumatize Bernard with the knowledge that the man he had always considered his father wasn't really his dad. After pondering how to respond without outright lying, she decided it was best to change the subject. "I don't want to seem rude, but what are you doing here?" Lily asked. "Well, you see how it is," sighed her mother-in-law. "I live here. I just went to the forest this morning to pick berries and got a little carried away. But don't worry, both houses are entirely at your disposal. I only have this summer kitchen. And it will even be yours if you meet the conditions." "And where will you live then?" Lily asked, concerned. "Don't worry," Rachel smiled. "My son hasn't wronged me. It's a complicated arrangement, so there's no point in explaining it. But I won't be left without a place to stay. And you won't have to put up with me here constantly either. But, still, there's a month. You'll have to bear with it." The whole scene made Lily feel acutely awkward. "Come, sit at the table, we're about to have lunch." "Thank you," said Rachel. "I'd love to. And then I'll bake some pies with fresh raspberries for you. I didn't gather all these for nothing. I couldn't eat this much by myself in a lifetime." Strangely enough, living on the same property with her would-be mother-in-law embarrassed Lily far less than she had feared. The elderly woman behaved rather delicately and tried not to interfere at all. Only occasionally did she watch Bernard a little too closely. But, on the other hand, that was understandable. He really was a spitting image of her son. Otherwise, they managed to establish a fairly neighborly coexistence. Rachel took full responsibility for cooking and spoiled Lily and Bernard with various dishes, mostly made from what the forest provided and what was grown in her own garden. Lily, in turn, helped with the garden. For the elderly woman, watering, weeding, and other chores were difficult. But for the young heiress, though it was unusual, it was still easier. She was physically stronger, so the work came to her much more easily. Over time, Lily managed to put both houses in order and offered Rachel to move into one of them. She refused. While the weather was warm, It was much more convenient for her to stay in the small summer kitchen, and no persuasion could change her mind. Bernard seemed absolutely happy. He spent entire days outdoors, sometimes in the forest, sometimes by the river, and occasionally he returned to play with those same figurines. Lily once even asked Rachel about their origin, curious where such a treasure had come from in a village house. Archie carved them, she replied tenderly. He's been passionate about it since childhood. You didn't know? No, I didn't, Lily shook her head. But that explains why they're so cleverly made. Exactly, smiled the elderly mother. He had real talent. And now, look, these trinkets came in handy. Honestly, I was thinking of throwing them away. What use are they? But Archie wouldn't allow it. And after he passed, I couldn't bring myself to do it. And it's good, isn't it? One day, the mother-in-law returned from her usual forest walk in a very worried state. She tried not to show it, but Lily, having studied her behavior well, immediately realized something was wrong. After a brief hesitation, she asked what had caused it. Yes, I met someone, she said somewhat gloomily. Don't worry, it's not your problem. Who did you meet? Lily asked insistently. Is someone bothering you? Maybe you should go to the police? Oh, the last thing you need is to get involved, Rachel shook her head. Archie already got into trouble, and now you'd do the same. This is serious, said Lily. You said he died from illness. Listen, if that's not true, if my son or I are in danger, I absolutely need to know. There won't be any danger if you don't get involved, Rachel replied. All right, fine, I'll tell you, otherwise your curiosity will get the better of you. So, there's a farmer here, a very unpleasant man. Archie had a serious conflict with him. He somehow found out that this Thomas is polluting our river. He dumps waste from his factory into it. And the whole village gets its water from that river, even for drinking. He tried to talk to him about it. He tried Rachel's side. At first, just talking, but when that didn't work, he threatened with the police and inspections. He really planned to go through some authorities. But then he suddenly got sick and eventually died. And you think, Lily gasped, that this farmer poisoned him? There's no proof, Rachel shrugged. The forensic examination didn't reveal anything suspicious. But tell me, do such coincidences even exist? Lily began to feel as if it had always been this way, that she had lived in the village with Bernard and Rachel from the very beginning, and that Archie had been there with them for a while, a victim of the struggle with the treacherous farmer. Sometimes she even forgot that she actually had a husband, alive and well. And almost this entire village life she had embarked on only briefly, just to help him deal with a difficult situation. The next morning, something happened that sobered her somewhat. Lily woke up later than usual. Around her was an unusual silence. There was no sound of Bernard playing, nor Rachel's grunts in the garden. At first, this didn't alarm her much. Lily stretched and stepped out of the house. Only after walking around the property did she realize there was no one there. Well, if you didn't count a few chickens, habitually scurrying underfoot, and goats looking at her curiously from their pen. But neither her son nor her would-be mother-in-law were anywhere, neither outside nor in either of the houses. Judging by the animals' behavior, they had already been fed, which was strange. Recently, Lily had taken on that responsibility. It wasn't difficult for her, and it was quite familiar after working in a pet store. Besides, goats were far more gentle than the hamsters, which always tried to nip an inattentive employee's finger. And the chickens behaved far better than parrots. Then, very slowly, a terrible suspicion came to her mind. Rachel had become fully convinced that Bernard was her biological grandson, and, given his resemblance to his father, must have been slightly unhinged. She had decided to take Lily's son and run away with him. She had deliberately fed the animals so they wouldn't wake Lily too early. Moreover, she had suspected something long before they even arrived in the village. Rachel's behavior at the funeral now took on a new, very sinister meaning. Lily realized she couldn't handle this situation alone. She needed someone who knew the area, who could at least guess where the elderly woman might have hidden with a small child. She ran to the nearest police station. "Hello," said a man at the reception. "I'm Bruce, the local officer. By the way, I haven't seen you here before." "Who are you, and how can I help?" "I'm Lily," she replied, flustered. "I recently arrived here for a short time." Stumbling and getting mixed up, she told her story. "Oh, wow." Bruce looked more surprised than alarmed. "Well, don't worry too much. I don't think Rachel intends to harm the boy. And, honestly, I've known her a long time. She wouldn't even hurt a fly." "Yes," but Lily hesitated again. "You see, I'm afraid she might have gone mad from everything she's been through." "I understand," the officer nodded. "Well, you can't rule that out. But I think they couldn't have gone far. Let's try to search." They got into the police car and headed to the forest. On the way, Bruce tried to calm her, telling various amusing stories from his practice, all of which had happy endings. It didn't greatly ease her anxiety, but she still felt grateful to him. Rachel and her grandson were found fairly quickly. Completely calm, not hiding from anyone, they were walking along the forest edge, looking for mushrooms. They occasionally shouted to each other so as not to get lost. It was actually those shouts that led to them being found. Rachel looked at Bruce in surprise, then turned her gaze to Lily. Understanding, and then judgment, flashed in her eyes. She clearly wanted to say something like, "Have you not known me well enough to suspect me of such a crime?" "It's good that we found you," Lily murmured, hugging her son. "Sorry, I thought the wrong thing. We just decided not to wake you," the elderly woman explained indulgently. "This was Bernard's idea," he said. "Let's let Mom rest, and we'll go for a walk. He even fed the animals himself so they wouldn't disturb you." "And the goat?" Lily asked, surprised, knowing why her son had been wary. "And the goat," Rachel nodded. "Well, it seems everything is fine with you," Bruce interjected. "No crime, no complaints against each other, right?" Both women nodded simultaneously. "Of course, there could be no complaints here." "Excellent," the officer smiled. "Then I can give you a lift home if you like." "No," Rachel shook her head. "We haven't collected all the mushrooms yet. And I think Lily will probably want to join us too." "Yes," Lily confirmed. "Bruce, thank you very much for your help and everything else." "Well, it's my job," he smiled. "Reach out anytime." He drove off, humming a tune, while they remained in the clearing, the three of them. Lily felt a burning shame. After all, they had lived under the same roof for so long. Surely the poor elderly mother, who had lost her son, didn't deserve such negative thoughts. "I have to tell you something," Lily finally said. "Although you probably already guessed, but Bernard is your biological grandson." "And I didn't just guess," Rachel sighed. "I knew it for sure. And Archie knew too. He once accidentally saw you at the playground and realized everything. It's hard not to notice when you see your own son. And the timing matches perfectly. But he had seen that you had a new husband, so he decided not to bother you. Although he regretted your breakup until the very end." "Wait, so my dad isn't really my dad?" Bernard asked, his eyes wide. "No, son," Lily shook her head sadly. "I would have told you, of course, but I was planning to do it later." "Well, that's fine," the child said suddenly with a smile. "I always thought Dad didn't love me. Now I guess I understand why." Her son went back to gathering mushrooms, paying no more attention to the adults' conversation. Watching him, her grandmother sighed with a strange sense of regret. So Archie came up with the idea of you living in this house, so I could at least spend some time with my grandson before the end. What do you mean, before the end? Lily asked, surprised. Well, you see, the elderly woman sighed again. I have an illness at an advanced stage. Doctors fought it for a long time, but it never went into remission. At my last appointment, they told me I had only weeks to live. At best, months. Lily looked at Rachel in horror. She had already grown attached to this kind, elderly woman. And now it turned out that she wouldn't be around for long, and there was nothing that could prevent it. At least she would truly have the chance to enjoy her grandson's company before it was too late. Moreover, now it was clear why the will had been so unusual. The next day, Lily was preparing to go to the city. Not permanently, of course, since her term there hadn't ended. She just needed to pick up some of her child's belongings that she hadn't taken in a rush. Strictly speaking, she should have done it a long time ago. But until now, she had been too afraid to leave her son alone with Rachel. And taking him with her seemed equally unwise. Now, however, Lily was completely confident in her mother-in-law. Besides, Bruce had promised to help out if needed. The night before, he had been invited to dinner with the family, which he had gladly accepted. Apparently, the young police officer lacked good company in the village, so he was happy to meet Lily. Approaching the apartment, she felt rather strange. For some reason, it suddenly seemed like she was trying to enter someone else's home. The place felt inhospitable, as if her true place was not here, but in that very village. When Lily unlocked the door, the feeling only intensified. She immediately sensed that something was wrong, although she couldn't put her finger on what exactly. Later, as she reflected on the moment, she realized there was a subtle but unmistakable scent of someone else's perfume at the threshold. If I had noticed it right away, I probably wouldn't have gone inside. I would have just slammed the door and left. After all, the things I needed could have been bought later. But I didn't want to witness the scene that awaited me when I entered the bedroom. You said she ran off to some remote place? She hissed. A strange, completely naked woman tried to cover herself with a blanket. She did run off, her husband replied, stunned, seemingly still not fully realizing what had happened. Yes, she's running off now, Lily added cheerfully, and this time for good. I'll just grab a few things, and she won't bother you anymore. For good? Gregory was taken aback. You can't. Do you need to sell the house to pay off debts or something? Oh, interesting. Lily was just astonished at his audacity. I promised you this before I caught you with someone else. Do you think I have any desire to help you after that? Absolutely not. Divorce, and deal with it however you can. The scene was utterly farcical. Lily hurriedly tossed the things she had come for into her bag, and whatever else she could grab. Her husband trailed dejectedly behind her in the apartment, trying to persuade her not to make a mistake, while the mistress stood in the middle of the bedroom, completely stunned, occasionally adjusting the slipping blanket. We're staying here for good, Lily announced to Rachel, Bruce, and Bernard that same evening. Her son immediately began hopping around the room with joy. He loved life in the village and had been sad thinking about the day they would have to leave. But now it turned out they wouldn't have to, and he didn't care at all why his mother had changed her mind. However, the two adults were very interested in the matter. I'll explain later, Lily mumbled, giving a short nod toward the child. No more questions were asked on the subject, until Bernard went to bed. Then she had to explain. To her surprise, Lily felt neither pain nor sadness about what had happened. Rather, she genuinely found it amusing to describe the ridiculous scene in detail. Well, that's good, Rachel said, laughing. Not that I wanted you to stay here, but because you've seen your husband's true face and won't be near him anymore. Yes, I guess I saw it before, Lily sighed. I was just deceiving myself. I don't even know why. Soon she got a part-time job. The local post office just happened to need a sorter. Of course, it didn't pay much, but since the family mostly lived off their own farm, it was more than enough. On the other hand, she now had plenty of free time. She used it well, enjoying time with her son and Rachel, having long pleasant conversations with Bruce, and going into the forest to pick berries and mushrooms. Lily really enjoyed her new life. The same could be said for her son. Bernard was absolutely thrilled. One day, when Rachel and Bernard had gone to the forest to pick berries, there was an unexpected knock at the door. Lily opened it, expecting Bruce to stop by for a chat, and immediately froze. Standing outside was a man she didn't know. He looked extremely threatening, nearly 2 meters tall, broad-shouldered, with a completely shaved head. Lily was so taken aback by his appearance that she didn't even think to greet him. She just stood there like a statue until he spoke first. "Hello," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Am I correct in assuming you are Lily?" "Let's say I am," she replied cautiously. "And you, who are you?" "Excuse me." "Thomas," he said with a faint smirk. "You must have heard something about me." Lily had indeed heard something. Now that he had introduced himself, everything fell into place. The very farmer Archie had conflicts with, who had probably ended up being the cause of his death. Was it any wonder that this news made her even more tense? "I suppose you also realize that I've heard some rather unflattering things about you," he said. "Oh, come on," Lily growled. "I actually came to talk to you, assuming you were a reasonable city person, not one of those village yokels. What do you care how I run my affairs? I heard you're only here temporarily," Thomas sneered. "Humph. Your information is outdated," Lily responded firmly. "I like it here, so I'm staying. And you know, the people you call village yokels are so far, far more pleasant to deal with." "Well, now that you've decided to stay," Thomas said threateningly, "you'd better not pick a fight with me." "And why would I?" Lily asked calmly. "I can even offer you a good job. You might earn even more than in the city. I could also help with repairs. You have a big farm here, but it seems you lack strong hands. And what would I owe for such generosity?" Lily asked shrewdly. "Oh, just a trifle," Thomas laughed tensely. "You see, your late fiancé, or whoever he was to you, well, he had a certain folder, containing some materials that I would very much prefer not to fall into the wrong hands. If you give me that folder, we'll be friends forever. You know, even if I knew where the thing you're talking about was," Lily said firmly, "I wouldn't give it to you. And I don't need your friendship. I've managed just fine without it." "I think you'll regret that," the farmer said coldly. There was nothing more to discuss, and he turned decisively and walked toward the gate, deliberately stepping on the garden beds as he went. Lily could only be glad that he didn't encounter a goat, one of the chickens, or, God forbid, her own son. One day, returning from the forest where the whole family had gone together, the owners discovered that both houses and the small cozy summer kitchen had been completely ransacked. Someone had clearly been through everything while they were away, and it was not hard to guess who it was and what he had been looking for. They called Bruce. He carefully examined the scene and then came out to the owners, who were waiting for his verdict. But his face was sad and puzzled. It was clear that the local policeman did not like having to tell them what he had to say. "No traces," he said. "They worked cleanly, with gloves. There's not the slightest clue pointing to the culprit. But we know exactly who did it." Lily exclaimed. "He even threatened me." "Doesn't that count for anything?" "Believe me," Bruce said with a sad smile, "that means a lot to me, but nothing to the court. Here, it's just your word against his, with no evidence. And even if there were evidence, the fact that he threatened you doesn't mean he carried out the threat. That requires separate proof. So what now?" Lily asked desperately. Isn't there anything we can do? There is one option, Bruce replied seriously. He didn't find what he was looking for. And that folder is still somewhere with you. I suppose the folder contained enough material to press charges far more serious than this ransacking. And the idea seemed perfectly reasonable. The only problem was figuring out exactly where to look. If the folder had been hidden inside the house, there was no hope that Thomas or his hired men hadn't noticed it. They had gone through literally everything, leaving no corner untouched. Then, the policeman said thoughtfully, "We need to search outside." It made sense. Archie, gathering the materials, certainly knew someone would be after him and most likely hid them somewhere Thomas wouldn't think to look. And how are we supposed to figure that out now? Lily asked gloomily. Try to remember where he liked to go. Maybe there was some special spot. There was. Rachel suddenly exclaimed. The lookout by the old oak tree. You know, he spent a lot of time there, sometimes entire days. And not just looking at the river, Bruce added thoughtfully. From there, you can see the farm perfectly. So that place could have served as an observation point. Without delay, they headed to the old oak, Bruce as a guide, Lily, and Bernard, who had decided at the last moment to tag along despite their attempts to dissuade him. While the adults examined the area around the tree, scratching their heads thoughtfully, the boys' eyes wandered upward. Before Lily could react, Bernard had skillfully climbed the mighty oak. She asked him to come down quickly, but when children his age simply obeyed their parents, Bernard found a hollow in the tree and even climbed inside. Then he emerged with a triumphant shout, nearly falling from the branch, clutching an old, dirty folder in his hand. That looks like it, Bruce remarked with satisfaction. Bernard was sent home to tell his grandmother about the find, and the adults decided not to delay and to take the documents to the district prosecutor's office. Reaching Bruce's house, they got into his car. But after a few minutes, the policeman gloomily announced, "It won't start." The car simply didn't want to go anywhere, and of course, it had to break down at such a crucial moment. No matter how hard he tried, Bruce couldn't fix the car. He even ran to the garage for some spare parts, grabbing the precious folder in a hurry. Then he returned, handed the folder to Lily, and ran off again, but still couldn't find what he had been looking for. Fortunately, the world is not without kind people. Noticing the commotion, one of the villagers offered to drive them where they needed to go. They gratefully accepted. However, it wasn't long before Bruce realized they weren't heading where they needed. By then, it was too late. Instead of the district center, they were driven to a forested area near the outskirts of the village, where Thomas was already waiting. A sinister grin played on the farmer's lips. He held a shotgun in his hands. "Let's skip the games," Thomas ordered. "Did you think I'm an idiot? I caused that ransacking so you'd lead me to the folder's real location. And I broke your car and even asked this good man, of course, not for free, to bring you here. So you have only one option, hand over the folder." Lily held the precious documents tightly to her chest, but she understood it was useless. Bruce gently took the folder from her hands, waved it in front of Thomas, and then, to everyone's surprise, swung it and tossed it far into the swamp. "So you won't get it, huh?" Thomas sneered. "Well, thank you. That works for me too." "Everyone is free to go," Lily said calmly. Lily was extremely depressed. No matter how hard Rachel tried, she couldn't convince her that she wasn't to blame for what happened. It was impossible to anticipate everything. Thomas had simply been cleverer. But that wasn't surprising. Cunning was characteristic of his type. "But this isn't over yet," the elderly woman said, though she didn't really believe it. After all, he didn't get the folder either. And honestly, never mind the folder. We'll find another way to deal with him. If not, Lily shook her head. "No need. He's always a few steps ahead of us. Sorry, but I don't want what happened to your son to happen to mine." "Yes, you're right," the mother-in-law agreed sadly. I somehow forgot about that. And Bruce has disappeared too, Lily noted worriedly. I went to see him this morning, thinking I might comfort him after yesterday, but he's not home, not at the station either, and the car is still there. I just hope nothing's happened to him. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. Both women jumped and glanced nervously toward the sound. Although neither said it aloud, they both thought the same thing. There was no choice, they had to open it. Who knew what might happen if they didn't? However, standing on the doorstep was not Thomas, whose arrival they had feared. It was Bruce, unusually cheerful given the circumstances. He walked into the house, whistling a tune, plopped down on the sofa, and asked for something cold to drink. "Oh, these commuter trains at rush hour," he complained. "What a nightmare. Not recommended. What were you doing on the train?" Lily asked, surprised. "And why are you so cheerful? Haven't you remembered what happened? You'll forget about it here," Bruce smiled. "No, I finished the job. The folder with the documents is currently being thoroughly examined by the district prosecutor's office. And believe me, Archie was brilliant. He dug up enough material to put that jerk away for a very long time." "How's that possible?" Lily was astonished. "You threw the folder into the swamp." "Did I?" Bruce laughed. "Of course, I'm not going to scavenge through the swamp. No, it's much simpler. We didn't actually have the folder with us yesterday. Well, technically we did, but it was filled with old newspapers and other paper junk, while the real folder had been at my house all along." "How is that possible?" Lily could only manage to say. "Very simple," Bruce smiled again. "I started suspecting something like this the moment the car refused to start for no reason. While running to the garage, I accidentally took the folder with me. Why didn't you tell me?" Lily asked timidly, smiling. "Just in case," Bruce shrugged. "Who knows, someone might have been listening. This way, I let him think he had one. Ended up outsmarting him. He thinks he's the smartest around. And life went back to normal." Lily finally filed for divorce and began preparing for her wedding. Bruce proposed, and she accepted. After everything they had been through, it felt as if they had known each other their entire lives. Bernard had also grown very attached to the policeman. Gregory, extremely unhappy about the divorce, and even more so that Lily refused to sell the house, was not about to give up easily. He realized that threatening his almost ex-wife with the division of property wouldn't work, so he found another lever of pressure. "You know what?" the husband said with malicious satisfaction. "I'm initiating a custody process. And I bet the court will side with me. In every respect, I look better. So you still have a choice: sell the house and give me the money you promised, or I take the child." "That's not your child," Lily pointed out. This became the decisive argument in court. The judge, after a moment's hesitation, ruled in her favor. Bernard was not Gregory's biological son and, moreover, showed no desire to live with him. Still, the ex-husband refused to give up. He declared that he would appeal the decision. And then, right in the courtroom, Rachel approached him. "What exactly are you trying to achieve?" she asked condescendingly. "Selling the house?" "That won't work. Since the house was built, our region has been declared a protected area. My son signed an agreement with the government allowing him to continue owning the land and buildings, but he cannot sell the property, build anything new, or use it for commercial purposes." This was the final blow for Gregory. He realized that, no matter how hard he tried or what threats he made, he would see no money. How he dealt with his debts, or whether he did at all, Lily never found out. But she didn't care. She married Bruce, who became a wonderful husband and an excellent father to Bernard. Moreover, their family experienced another unexpected blessing. Rachel went into remission and could now spend several more years with the people she loved most.